In this lecture, we're going to learn about the while loop. Now, it's really important that you pay attention to this lecture because otherwise you will probably mess this up because a while loop can run infinitely. And if it does that, it's going to crash your construct 2, it's going to crash your program, and it will slow down your computer. So if for some reason that does happen, don't just restart your computer, open up the task manager and close out of all the processes that you opened and then try to restart your computer. But after you close out of those tasks that are open after the application is closed, then your computer should return to normal. So it's very important that you know what a while loop does and how to control it, because if you misplace it, then it's not going to work. So I already have this set up just so this does not happen to us. And also what I want to show you is what this would look like with some pseudo code. So I'm going to make a comment here, and I'm going to make a pseudo while loop just like we've been doing with everything else. So what this is going to do is it's going to say while this condition is true, then do something just like this. Let me hit Shift Enter, do this action. But here's the trick, and this is where people kind of get caught up, because you need to have something else besides doing the action. Yes, this is also another action that you need to do, but you have to have something here that modifies, let's call this modify the condition above. And that's really the big takeaway here. So even though it's something simple to keep in mind, make sure you keep in mind that whatever condition is true, whatever condition you're checking, that the while loop action has a way to modify this condition. Otherwise, it'll go on forever and ever. So you need a way to control it, and that's the whole point. So let's take a look here as to what we have. So on our layout, we just have our basic tiled background and text object from our retro style project. And we're using this text object to display our counter variable, which equals 0. And then we're doing that by setting this in the every tick. So every single frame per second that the project is running, we're keeping that out of the while loop. I recommend keeping your text objects or setting your text objects outside of the while loop as much as possible. And in fact, there's probably even an easier way to do it just by setting the variable to equal something else and leave the text object in the every tick. You really just want to keep any logic in the while loop, any actions here that is specific to this condition. So when you're crafting a while loop, you need to add the event system and then go under loops, and then right over here you're going to find the while loop. And here, let's read this description. Repeat so long as the rest of the conditions in the event are true. Okay, so that might be kind of confusing if you've never done this before. What you need to have here, you can't just have it say this. You can't just say while add 1 to counter. That doesn't make any sense. You need to have some condition. Maybe you have more than one condition, but you have to have some condition like we have up here. Now, of course, this could say, while this condition is not true, of course, you can invert that and do that. You just have to make sure that it's checking a condition. So you have to add in what would be a logical and statement right here. So we're saying while the counter is less than 10, because by default, the counter is 0. So therefore, this while loop is going to get fired off when I run the project. Then let's add 1 to the counter. So now this is going to add 60 frames a second. It's going to happen very fast. We're not even going to see it when I hit play. That's how the while loops work. So when you're doing something in game, and a more common example of using a while loop would be for collision with something. If your player is overlapping your enemy, or if it's overlapping a spike or something like that, you might use a while loop for that case, or you might just use the overlapping commands, which I would recommend doing in that situation. But there might be a certain circumstance where you need to use the while loop to run specific code. In that case, just make sure, again, that you're modifying this condition. So you can see here, this action is going to add 1 to the counter, which is then going to make it so this condition is now invalid. As soon as we try to hit to 11, it's going to stop, and then it's going to just set our text at 10. And that's all going to happen behind the scenes. So even if you're running your game, it's going to happen instantly, and that's the whole point. So let's hit play here, and let's see. All we should see is the counter is going to equal 10 immediately, because this has all happened on our load time. So that is while loops. I hope you understand this. It can be a great thing to use. And just make sure you're using it correctly. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck in infinite loops, and you're going to come to me and asking why I crashed your computer. I didn't do it. just make sure that you close out your loop. Another thing that you can do to close out the loop in case you don't have something to modify here, which I recommend you always do, is you can actually add in the system to type in stop loop, and that'll stop any running while loops that are going on right now. So make sure you have that in there. Don't put this in right here. Make sure you control that somewhere else. Maybe you have just another thing that says if the counter is less than 10, put that in there. I'm pretty sure if you put this in here, it's going to stop the loop before it even starts. But that's another way that you can manually stop it just in case you need to. So it's pretty simple in terms of the way it looks in syntax and the way it looks in construct too. I think it looks pretty fine. Thank you for watching this lecture. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you in the next one.